Welcome to SpacePod. What is this all about? Well, in these uncertain times, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, the world of space, or more accurately, workspace, is going through change. So, SpacePod's a chance to grab some time while people are working from home from professionals across the industry, partners, colleagues, customers, and thought leaders to share their personal views of the change event going on around us. Let's get started. Welcome to SpacePod, a place for like-minded people to pop along, have a chat, and share their views on the impact on space and whatever that means. My name is Paul Russell. I work for IBM AI and Applications business, and I'm curious about how space around us helps the human being have a better day. We aim to keep it short and sweet so that listeners can pick it up as they walk the dog or grab their coffee break. Joined with me today, I have Paul Gatlin from IBM, my regular buddy on SpacePod. Welcome, Paul G.
Hello, Paul. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Paul. And I'm also joined by a great friend, Matthew Marson, Head of Smart Places at WSP. Hi, Matthew. How's it going?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, doing very well, thanks.
Great. Matthew, as our guest, I wanted to frame the chat around rebooting smart buildings, given the global challenge the sector is facing right now. You okay with that?
Yeah, sounds good.
And I want to ask where you are in the world right now.
I'm in London at home, based over in the east near Canary Wharf. So, yeah, not too far from the Thames.
I want to first start by asking you to describe what your job as Head of Smart Places at WSP is all about.
Yeah, so I lead our practice where some of our consultants and engineers try to get their heads together to look at how technology interfaces with the built environment and kind of what that means technically in terms of business model and then some of the societal impacts. So it could be anything from kind of city scale all the way down to the individual building, and it's sort of anything you can think of that involves technology of some description and what that can do for a user.
Fantastic. Sounds a really interesting job you have. And I guess with this sort of world that we're in right now, your discussions you have with your clients are getting more and more varied. So on that theme, I want to just understand what you think might be the big step changes your customers will be looking at during this kind of shift back into buildings over time, and what that might mean to space.
Yeah, I think I really enjoy that meme that's happening on LinkedIn. It says, who is responsible for the digital transformation of your organization? There are three options: A, the CEO; B, the CTO; or C, COVID-19. And COVID-19 selected because it has really forced us to basically fast forward all of the stuff that we might have been piloting beforehand and basically prove the case that work from home can work because we had to make it work. And I think the gut reaction of a lot of business leaders that I'm speaking with is that they need less office space because now that people can work from home, surely they will want to. And millennials want to as well, right? And I'm not sure that's the case at all. If I just think about some of the millennial aspects here, we've found in some of the clients that we've worked with, in fact, younger people are the ones that want to come into the office most because of their situation. They probably have smaller living spaces. They might be sharing with others as a product of where they are in their career. And as such, it's quite nice to go to the office for the facilities and, to take advantage of all of the stuff there. Then if you think about some of the space planning, essentially over the past 10 years, technologies have been used to help justify to organizations that they can move from supplying about 23 meters squared per FTE down to about 10. And if we think of the kind of requirement for social distancing there, I'm not sure that that's going to cut it anymore. We're actually going to see that organizations need to take on more space in order to make sure that their employees are going to be comfortable, that it's a safe place to work when they come back to the office.
Wow, that's really interesting, especially the millennial point of view. I've not heard that before. Paul, I know you're desperate to ask Matthew a question.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So just want to talk about data for a second, Matthew. Well, what are your thoughts on how space data around the environment and the people will influence smart build designing in the future?
Yeah, I think in the context what we're seeing going on in the world at the moment, we're going to be very interested in how particular desks and facilities have been used and to what capacity. I also think there's probably a lot of opportunity for facility managers in order to do more enhanced documentation on the cleaning that they deliver to spaces. So I think lots of organizations are going to insist that there's a shift that happens. So you'll have a morning group of employees and then an afternoon group, but it'll be that kind of hour window in the middle where we do the changeover employees. That is where there's going to be data will be necessary to make people feel comfortable, and that, to ensure companies are doing the right thing, that things have been disinfected properly and, allowed to sit for the right amount of times and things like that. So I think we're going to find a lot more kind of field devices and IoT deployed into spaces to make sure that those sorts of things are captured. I'll also think we're probably going to see a hastening to people's well-being agendas around things such as the well standard, which is interesting standards there as to how you can basically clean your air better, if that's HEPA filters from the outside or using UV or other sorts of protection to make sure the air is properly cleaned. I think it's going to be quite an interesting time for building services engineers and facility managers as how they deliver some of those changes.
Matthew, pulling out some really interesting points, isn't it, Paul, in terms of, the thought processes that are probably going on right now. And it kind of made me think, as you talk there, Matthew, about smart tech. And I know we get asked every day at IBM, but I just wondered on the smart tech and the shift, what do you think the role of the smartphone helping people have a better day at work? Do you think there's a new role that the smartphone might play here?
Yeah, and I think I've got a couple of interesting examples of some conversations that I've already been having with clients on this. Speaking to a bank at the moment, they want to try and do their security process, but contactless. And mobile phones are quite good at this. If I think about the range that I can achieve with Bluetooth and using some sort of digital access tool, then from a distance, the gates will be able to pick me up and allow me to enter and automatically call the lift that I need to go to the floor that I want. So that whole kind of process of cards and barriers and buttons we could do in a contact-free way. And then for another client, which is a university, they're quite concerned about their international student base not being able to travel to come back to the university for their exams or for the new term in September. And they want to start using a mobile app to find the way to take their university and that experience that they have on campus to wherever it is they are in the world. So I see them as a greater extension for ways to, kind of broadcast that sense of place, make those interactions we have with the physical a little bit easier.
Paul, I think you're dying to ask another one, aren't you?
I am, Paul. Yeah, internationally, Matthew, I know we've obviously spoke about, focused on the UK, but, internationally, I know you've got a remit. So are there any other innovations happening outside of the UK that might be useful to share?
I think some countries who are perhaps trying to make new places have got an opportunity that the UK doesn't have, given that we've got quite a lot of established cities. So particularly in the Middle East, who are either knocking old stuff down and building again or starting entirely from scratch, they've kind of got the opportunity to leapfrog what we have here at home in terms of the digital infrastructure that they provide to their citizens. So one kind of project that I'm working on at the moment in Saudi basically wants to build a smart city from scratch. In order to do that, they want to deliver a load of kind of digital infrastructure that allows people to build on applications or insert sensors in their context that, sort of make sense to feed a wider city agenda. They're basically thinking about it digital first with a complete repository of APIs so that it almost feels a bit like an open source city. And I'm not sure we're anywhere near that type of thinking yet here in the UK.
And that's really interesting. No, thank you, Matthew. I mean, I guess looking at some of the international locations where if they are starting from scratch, then again, they're just working with a clean sheet. And obviously we typically haven't got that luxury.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew and Paul. I was just also thinking, one of the biggest criticisms, I guess, of the built industry over all time has been a time to do things, the sort of view from the outside of why does it take so long to do things. And we've seen some amazing examples recently of how quickly people can come together and achieve things. So Matthew, I just wondered, once we're through whatever changes are going to happen longer term, what do you think might happen in terms of the relationship between those players in the built world who probably were a little bit slower to engage? Do you think that will change? Architects, M&E, building owners, operators?
I think it's going to be a case of adapt or die for a lot of them. We've never really seen such a forced event before that has made people have to be agile, get on with it and adapt. Whereas before, I think there were a lot of, I'm not sure about that. That can't really be done. And when it becomes a bit more instinctive for survival, somehow you're able to find a way that you couldn't before. So I hope that we will get better at delivering things in a more agile manner. I'm not necessarily wedded to the idea that things need to be faster in terms of like a construction timeline. but certainly in just the agility and being able to respond to needs. So, I mean, at the moment, working with somebody who has sort of got like a 10-year roadmap for their software that they're going to put across their building portfolio. And I find that very difficult that you can plan for software in a decade's time because they're matching it to construction timelines. I don't think they've quite got the balance right there. So it would be interesting to see what they learn from how the market will change in the next year or so, and how they update their plans to deliver on some of the aspirations that they think their software is going to bring. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the learnings that the physical world takes from the digital.
Sitting in a software company like IBM, that's a nice point that you made there, and something we should probably reflect on, Matthew. And Matthew, some really strong messages from you about smart building industry and the sort of what we call the shifting sands of understanding about space. And you gave some interesting points that I've taken away about the millennials, the whole mobile tech, digital first, and also some of the impact on the industry. That's some good food for thought. I'm going to wrap up now. So firstly, Matthew from WSP, huge thank you.
Thank you.
And Paul G, my fellow IBMer, once again, thank you to you.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure, Paul.
To anyone listening, if you like SpacePod and want to join Paul and I on a future podcast, or just want to connect via LinkedIn, please do so. You've been listening to SpacePod. Please stay safe.